Neal received his PhD from the University of Washington in 1998 in computer science and an MPH from Harvard in 2004. He's been co-leading the open source ComCare platform since 2007, including living 3 years in East Africa. He's currently the Chief Strategy Officer of Dimagi Incorporated, and he coordinates the ICT for CHW online discussion group where you can go and share experiences and learn lessons from others using these platforms.
Thanks, Dallas, and thanks to UCLA for arranging this panel and having me on it. I've already learned a lot. And thank you all for coming. I know this is the end of a long day in a massive conference. I kind of had to be here, but I'm impressed by your stamina to keep going, and I'll try to keep this pretty high level, which will be easy because I could build on a lot of the really great presentation that Andy and Mark just gave. Dimagi is a small social enterprise based in Boston with offices in Delhi and Cape Town and soon Mozambique. Our turnaround time is 6 days. So I'm just kidding. Andy and I actually just met. We had talked the first time in South Africa, I think in 2008 or thereabout, and we haven't seen each other since. And today we spent an hour or two really excitedly talking about how we've discovered a lot of the same lessons with each other, and some interesting differences to our approach. We're both a little bit jealous of how the others things have gone, but a lot of really big similarities, and we're excited to figure out how we can somehow join forces. I mean, in our vision, there's a huge market, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of community health workers using these kind of tools, and a good market has more than one product in it. So we're excited to be back, to be reconnected. And Dimagi has, we've done quite a lot of projects, I think about 100 all over the world, and we have two basic flavors of projects. One is ones that do outreach to the end population or the beneficiaries, a large number of people, almost always through SMS. And the other is we try to equip a workforce, an extension worker, like a community health worker, with a mobile application. Ours is called ComCare, similar to the one you just heard about from Abenzi. And a good example of that first type of project is the one that Dallas mentioned that we're going to start in Calcutta. It's a careful randomized control study of doing outreach to people to support a treatment program in Calcutta. It's great that it's a study. There's really, as Mark mentioned, a lot of hype in this area, and this will provide some real evidence. And we're not going to use SMS. I was just talking to Dallas. For low literacy rates, we'll use voice-based systems, IVR, interactive voice response systems, and we'll try, I think, a variety of kind of simple systems and some more creative systems with more narrative built in. Dallas can feel free to elaborate a little later. What I'm going to start out with is just a video of our system, ComCare. This is the handset application, and this just gives you kind of another idea of what the community health worker sees. So this is our second flavor of application, where you've got a community health worker who's given a mobile device, and they use it to on all their visits to try to both track their clients and improve patient care.
Okay, so before you start, we're going to connect the volume very quickly. Super. Yeah.
You have to try to make it full screen.
This is a quick demo of a multimedia ComCare application. This particular application has been used by World Vision in India and is geared toward maternal and child health. When you open the application, the first thing you'll see is a login screen. Each community health worker has a username and password. For this demo, we just made a user called user, whose password is 123. Now that I log into the application, all data I submit will be tied to this user. Inside the app are two modules, mother and child. Each module has a collection of forms. The registration form is used to collect preliminary data on patients and add them to your patient list. For all the other forms, you select a patient from the list. For example, family community health worker going on a pregnancy home visit. I select my patient, Divya, from the list. And you can view some details about Divya before the counseling session starts. Now this is my first counseling session visit with Divya, so all I can see now are registration information, her phone number, and her estimated delivery date. Now I'm opening the form that I will use to collect data and counsel Divya. This is where the multimedia elements come in. For each prompt in this form, you'll see a short text description at the top, a picture in the middle, and if I press the hash key, a short audio will play. We found that multimedia is invaluable both to help local area community health workers and patients understand the health information, and to help the community health worker better engage her patient, keep their attention. Now, this application can also do skip logic behind the scenes. For example, each pregnant woman in this area is supposed to go on 4 visits to her A and B. If I have gone on my first visit, it will ask me about the second. But if I say no to the second visit, it's smart enough not to ask me about the third. Another feature of ComCare is multiple language support. For example, if I want to see this application in the original Hindi, I can go to Languages and select Hindi. To go back to English, go Options.
Okay, I think that gives you a flavor of how the application works. And sometimes I just find it's easier to get a sense of it when you could see it. Oh, there are. And so just to give kind of, I think I've just got 5 or so slides. I'll just give some of the kind of high level sort of approach that we take to how to scale this up. As Mark and Andy said, you know, the technology we've made a lot of progress on that, and our goal is really to figure out how to spread this widely. And the approach we take, both of these things is a product-oriented approach, which in fact, you know, I've been in the mHealth space for a while, and especially in the open source part, that hasn't been a very popular word to say that we're building products. Interestingly, to me, you know, we've really, over the last couple of years, really embraced it as the way to get to scale. We could use the same code base to support lots of different community health programs. So we have maybe about 50 community health programs starting up different applications of ComCare. Some are maternal health, some are TB, some are HIV. And just like an analogy would be SurveyMonkey, that, you know, each survey is configured differently. The content is totally different, but the code itself is the same. And that really provides you a lot of scale. Like what makes this all maintainable and scalable is that no one community health program has to pay to maintain the entire software, but they're all, in a way, supporting it. We've also, by doing a lot of these products, we've developed standard pricing, standard implementation plans, standard implementation packages, and that really allows us to also just roll things out better and faster, and to have groups benefit, different groups, you know, benefit from what they do. We did a bunch of deployments in a row in India. We got a grant to kind of scale up, and so we did about 10 in a year. And we had a lot of great collaboration among the different of our large partners. So I'll just not name them all, but one group you know, developed a maternal health module for antenatal visits, a checklist system, and then we went, you know, that was in Uttar Pradesh, and they worked with another organization in Rajasthan, and they copied that module over and just made some tweaks, and some of those changes went back to the first one. And then a third group in Maharashtra took that same thing and added an immunization package to it. And what was interesting to us about this is that those groups never talked to each other once. They just all worked through kind of our team passing through these open source content, and in the end they all learn from each other, but indirectly. We call it emergent collaboration is the phrase we've come to call it. And that really epitomizes the second point of trying to build a strong community. So we have authoring tools, just like SurveyMonkey. You could go to comcarehq.org and you could create an account, and it's not as easy as SurveyMonkey. It takes some time and patience, and probably need some IT savviness to get there, but you can create a full ComCare application. The registration forms, the images, the pictures, the case, you could customize that case record, all that. And we now have an active community supported by a mailing list and Skype chats when needed to support people around the world to be able to deploy their own ComCare applications. It always makes my day when I see somebody, I've never heard of before, pose some technical question that I don't know the answer to, and then see somebody else answer it on the mailing list for how to do a particular thing with ComCare. And we're in the process of developing an app store kind of interface where you could see different modules and then mix and match them, put them into your own account, and then customize them, like change the language and change some of the details for it. And then finally, we have a strong commitment to open source software. Open source is it's not a simple concept or simple thing. We have a joke saying that open source doesn't mean free. Open source is free like a free puppy is free. Software requires a lot of maintenance and support, and so it's not just obviously better that things are open source. There's a lot of strong advantages to it. We think ultimately it affords a lot of local ownership that countries, at least at scale, can take over the system if they want. So if something goes to really national scale, it means certainly that no one entity can hold that that country or that other or any large organization kind of hostage to the code that they own. They always have the option of taking the code and running it themselves. It might take some time and effort, but at scale it would be cost effective, and it's kind of an important, in some ways keeps us in check to say that we don't own it all. The way so we've been gathering a fair bit of momentum recently. The way we got there was with really taking a very bottom-up or an iterative approach. One of our mantras has always been to do our design under the mango tree. We've realized that we come up with a lot of brilliant-seeming ideas in Boston and DC, and most of them are just totally wrong and fail once they get to the field. And so we try to get our ideas out into the field very quickly, see what works, iterate and improve, get a lot of feedback from the users, include the users in the design. To take sort of another view of it, one of the overall things that we see we're doing is figuring out a compromise between how community health programs are designed to work in kind of an idealized way and how they can actually work. We're often brought in by the headquarters of an organization. We hear about a community health program that covers it does all sorts of amazing things. If it's in maternal care, they do 4 antenatal visits. They cover all these topics in each visit. And then as we get closer to the actual community health workers, as we talk to the in-country headquarters or the field managers or talk to the community health workers or work with them for a while, we get a more and more realistic picture that they're doing often a lot less, that they can't cover all those things in a topic, they don't do all the 4 visits. And that's what we're brought in, is that the actual intervention, what's actually happening on the ground, is seen to be too far away from how a program is designed. And so we're brought in to increase that, to improve the practice of the community health workers, to make it more closer to what's been designed. The problem with that is that it really, that design may have been too grandiose. It may have not been realistic. It may have required, hour-and-a-half visits at houses or too much work for what the community health worker is paid for or not paid for or has time for. And so technology doesn't create that problem, doesn't create that tension, but it really shines a light on it. Because now if you design your system for the idealized view of how the community health program is supposed to operate, if you put in every stamp and everything, now you've got a system that's really hard to use, and you're kind of imposing that on the community health workers, and it's not going to be used, or it's really going to disrupt the practice. And so I realize it's a bit of a complicated point, but our takeaway is that if you are going to implement this technology, on some level you have to be open to compromise. You have to be willing to take a look at what you thought was required, and then if it's just unrealistic, figure out how to break it up or not insist on it in some way, because the technology is really going to force an agreement between kind of what you want to happen and what's actually happening on the ground. To go to a specific case of how important the implementation is and the feedback loops that we heard about in the last presentation. This is one of my favorite studies using ComCare that showed both the challenges and the potential of the system. It's done by Brian Dorenzi, who recently graduated with a PhD from the University of Washington. It was done in Tanzania in partnership with Pathfinder International. And we have a study of about 90 community health workers. All were using ComCare, and they're supposed to do monthly visits of their HIV positive and other chronically ill patients. And we so half of them, everyone had ComCare, half of them got, in the first part of the study, half of them got kind of a pretty comprehensive set of reminders with escalation to supervisors. So they'd get a reminder the day before the visit was due. I think they got 2 reminders the day of the visit was due. They got warnings saying they hadn't done the visit if they haven't done it yet. And that's really the point. We know when the visit's reported. So if we haven't gotten it back yet, we could send more reminders. And then on day 3, they got escalation to a supervisor. They got a SMS saying, if you don't do it tomorrow, we'll alert your supervisor. And then if they didn't do it, we alerted their supervisor. And not going too much into the details, you could see that with all that in that study 1, you got much more timely visits. It was hard to keep, when at the start of the visit, everyone started perfect. The study drifted down in terms of how timely their visits were. And then with all those reminders, you got much better performance than without it. And then we took out the supervisor. We took out that escalation to the supervisor, and you could see that just with the reminders, it started to degrade again towards the norm. And then what's not shown here is Brian then graduated. He got his PhD, and the system kept running, but he wasn't attending to it. And the performance fell off again, because he had been following up with the supervisor to say, make sure to call them if you get this alert. And there's a little more to the story than that. But the basic point here is that the technology, to borrow a phrase I really like of Kentaro Toyama, who's an ICDD skeptic, is that the technology just amplifies human intention. So you could use it to strengthen your community health programs. You could use it to amplify supervision. But by itself, it's not going to do that much. I'm just going to lightly touch on this last slide, which is to say that another role that we've increasingly seen ourselves as wanting to play, as Dimagi is wanting to play, is to build mHealth capacity among organizations. 3-4 years ago, a lot of the work being done was by groups that really were very innovative, wanted to do new things, which is great, and that's still needed. But now there's a lot of organizations who are maybe not quite so adventurous, not the kind of first adopter types, but really could benefit from the tools that we think we have evidence of that work. And so we've started to try to proactively reach out to those groups. And one of the ways we've done it, and this might be a little complicated to see, but this is some evidence from India, is we started organizations. We gave them each 10 phones, just like a small incentive and some free field support to try ComCare. So it's a little bit, it's marketing, it's a little bit of like a money-back kind of guarantee or a 30-day free trial kind of approach. And we got great, really, at least in this set, really fantastic results. A lot of great partnerships have come out of it, but 10 of we did it with 11 groups. 10 of them got a successful proof of concept going with the 10 phones. All of those did at least some kind of evaluation, some rigorous evaluation, some informal internal ones. 9 of those are planning to scale up, and of those 9, 7 are already scaling up. They've bought more phones. Some of the larger ones are in the hundreds of phones, some of the smaller ones buying another 50 phones. And we've really found that it was, it was a really good experience that we're now replicating more widely to say that it's important to start, get your hands dirty, figure out what it can and can't do, start with something small that isn't a complete pilot of itself, and think about then afterwards, if you want, how to expand it. So thanks a lot, and looking forward to your questions to any of us.
Great, so we'll take questions on from these 2 presentations while we get set up for the next talk. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Caricia from INSEAD and UC Berkeley. And a couple of you discussed an incredibly exciting turnaround time, 5 to 7 days. And I think it's an exciting opportunity to really engage a lot of all of us who are creating the programs on the ground. But for people who are new to technology, and who have never gone through the process of developing a good technology. I mean, some of you mentioned how important to you it was to engage end users in the process of development. Can you talk a little bit about how that works? I see that there's a little bit of a disconnect between who your client is, like who's buying the program, say a researcher, a research institute, and who are the most important users, say the community health workers, without whom the project will fall apart. So how do you make sure it works for both parties, and how do you engage end users with such an ambitious turnaround time with your product?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the turnaround time was a little bit of a joke, and it's good that you're clarifying it, because one of the things we really, when we start projects, one of the things we kind of fight for in the schedules with our clients is to put in what we call time, significant amount of time for a refinement period. So you could do all the, first there's design, get it, what you think is right, and then spend, easily 6 weeks, potentially more, if you have it, putting in the hands of a small number of real users, having them give feedback, and then improving it iteratively until you get a system that's really usable. And what we find, a lot of the community health workers we use, are not, for any number of reasons, are not used to giving very critical feedback on day one. And so we work with that small set. That designer of the mango tree was kind of a picture of that kind of thing. We work with 5 or 6. And what's important is to show that their suggestions change the application. And after they see that they made a suggestion, now the questions are in a different order, or the color is a different color, any of those kind of things, then more suggestions flow for how to make it improve. So that's part of our approach.
Can I say it as well, just to also iterate the joke? I mean, in some ways, as much as it took a week for that first thing, the other process has taken 6 years. So it's been anything but fast turnaround from that point of view, and it has been built as we went. And that, as fantastic as it's been, is also a limitation in that sense. And I think that's what Andy was trying to speak about the more we can get teams to communicate and to build kind of systems that can be used, it then saves that pre-programming it all, all the time, which is not only time-consuming but also very costly.
Yeah, just to echo what's been said already, but just also to say that whilst things do take a long time, the whole point is that things should never stagnate. The practices change, people change, healthcare changes. So it's very important that the technology is flexible. And the way we've handled it typically to start with is with Researcher. That's like an off-the-shelf kind of package. You can download and install it in a few hours, as I'm sure ComCare you can as well. What takes the time is when you actually need to do the engagement. And you can only start engaging with people when they reach a certain level of understanding as to what the technology is capable of doing. So it's almost like the first phase is an educational one. And once people are on board and they understand, wow, so you're not just sending text messages, then you can start building on that understanding. So the amount of time it takes, it's actually it never ends in that sense. But you're getting value, more and more value as you go through the process. So the more you can engage, the more value you'll get, but the longer it takes.
So I have a question for Andy and Neal. Both of you have multiple customers, and you've both talked about the importance of a robust platform that could allow multiple interfaces. Tell us the price tag of what you really need, or how much you had to invest to get to a robust platform, or how much more you need.
Oh, Andy, you could go first.
Are you offering? Because it depends. So we've been building the Mobenzi platforms for 6 years using a handful of developers. So we're a company of 24 people running for about 6 years. So if you do the math in terms of salaries and so on, it's a several $1 million investment to get to the point we're at now. Having said that, the whole point of platforms is that you don't have to pay for the platform every time. You want to get economies of scale. So the question's a difficult one to answer because, as I've just mentioned, things never cease. The development continues. Google are still building their search algorithm, even though they're one of the most successful companies in the world. And Android, as successful as it is now, continues to evolve. So the point, I think, is at what point do you reach the necessary scale? And I think that we're probably, I don't know what your sense is, but I feel that there's been a momentum shift recently. I felt like the first 5 years we were hitting a lot of ceilings in terms of people buying into the idea, and we were putting a lot of money in ourselves. But I think the momentum has shifted. My feeling is that we can now produce a solution for a relatively small amount of money. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars if you're looking at a national program for a customized version of the software. To have built what we had done now for example, for Polani or Good Start, I think it was probably in the region of 1 or 2 million rand to get to the point at which the programs were running, which is a lot of money to spend for a research project. But the point is, it's got us to the point now where for hundreds of thousands of rands, we could literally build a pretty impressive system for national scale. So unfortunately, it's a very difficult question to put a number on, but it's a lot less than it would have been if we were building this from scratch every time.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think for us, it's been sort of similar amounts of investment. There might be another big chunk to go to real scale. I don't know, in terms of just, there's I think some things that we've been working out, you know, in the terms of the thousands that we have that might have to change to go to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users. But yeah, big investment on the order of millions of dollars to get where we are. And now the incremental cost of creating a brand new application is, you know, can be done in a few days by not very technical person who's gotten, you know, a couple months of experience with our tools. I think that's probably similar for what they're at.
My name is Lillian from Kenya, and just to add on to the question on cost, what I'm wondering is if I want you to use ComCare in my program, and it's not national scale, how much would that cost me to set up and continue, and it's not really changing much of what you already have, and how much do the community health workers themselves get to interact with the system to get feedback on their own performance?
Two great questions. We have standard pricing packages available on our website. And so I'll just say very quickly, there's a level we call basic, where you do everything kind of yourself with our tools, and then if you want us to host the data, that's $9 per user per year. You could take the whole open source code and run it yourselves, although at small scale that's going to be more expensive. And then our first standard package, where we come in and start up everything, is $25,000 US dollars. And for the interaction of the community health worker, we're just starting to build in more regular performance feedback. In fact, we have a pilot in Kenya with a group called UCRC, where we're going to try some different kinds of graphs. And one question is how much information to give them about how they compare to their peers, and like, should it be very specific? Should they see who's doing best, who's doing worse, or should it be kind of, you know, more general? So we're starting to work out some more of that. Add something for pricing for?
Well, she asked about ComCare. Our pricing is actually a pay-as-you-go model. So we decided to go with the same model that we felt worked very well in the third world, just like prepaid airtime has worked. So with our system, you actually pay for use. The setup fee is a very difficult one to quantify, I think, as Neal alluded to, because it depends on how much input you need from our team versus how much you do yourself. So we don't actually have a setup fee per se, but you can purchase what we call credit, which allows you to process a certain amount of data. And as you process more data, so you purchase credit for us to host the data for you. Also, the pricing is available on our website. And in terms of customization, $25,000 for a fairly involved program sounds about ballpark. If we were talking about a project which involved follow-up visits, visit scheduling, and that sort of thing.
Thank you for your informative presentation. I'm Paul Macharia from Kenya. I'm working as a data manager at the National AIDS Control Program. Two questions. One, I'm looking at data security from the mobile phone side, transmission, and also the web interface. And also the next question is about confidentiality. If data is being stored on the mobile phone side, how does the system ensure confidentiality? Thank you.
Andy, you can go first.
I'm noticing a trend here. So yeah, it's a great point and obviously critical. There are a couple of mechanisms that you can use to improve confidentiality and data security. So one of the key mechanisms is through encryption. And so we make use of SSL, which is your standard encryption from phone to central server, as well as when you're accessing the server via your web browser. So that's a standard security that you would get if you were accessing internet banking, for example. There are a couple of things that we do in terms of data security which are related to how the solution is architected. And one of the key things is we don't actually store records on the phone permanently. We only send down the very small piece of data that is required for that particular interaction that the community health worker is going to be dealing with. So if that community health worker is going to visit you for your adherence test for that, your adherence visit for that day, we would only send down the record before you left for work. So we don't have a full record of all the patients in the system or assigned to you residing on the phone permanently. So it's kind of a smart client architecture. In terms of the web side of things, there's very granular permissions which allow you to decide who gets to see and access what data. You can hide certain columns from certain users. So it's quite configurable. But I think Neal's point earlier was very important with this, is that it's only as good as how you configure it and how you manage it. So just because the technology can keep data secure doesn't mean it will be secure. You still need to have to understand, you know, where the potential threats lie. So from our perspective, we've tried to build the technology to a state where we believe it is far more secure than any other technique currently in use, but it's not necessarily foolproof. It's as weak as the people using it.
Yeah, I can take the next one first if you want, but that was a great answer. And as an illustration of the point, we found some community health worker programs, we've gone in after a while and realized that they gave all the community health workers the same password in the system. And so that's, it's a good illustration that it's only as good as you need it. Another point is to compare it to what is the typical locally is a paper notebook that anybody could read. And so on a local level, often, even the simplest thing on the phone is more secure. That's really been appreciated in some of the more sensitive, HIV-related projects we have, that it's, obviously better than a notebook in terms of what the community has access to. If somebody just finds a notebook versus finding the phone is harder to use.
Great. Last question.
Good day. My name is Evangelist Mary Clement. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm a nonprofit organization raising funds for orphanages due to...
Can you speak closer into the microphone, please?
Yeah, oh, surely. Again, my name is Evangelist Mary Clement. I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, and I have a nonprofit organization raising funds for orphanages throughout the world, many of them due to mothers who are taken from, lose their lives due to AIDS complications and other situations. However, I want to thank you, the panel. I'm very impressed with the information. It's very new to me, and I think it's a great tool and a great achievement that you've accomplished. I would like to ask a question about, you said you were UCLA, but I wanted to find out the technology that you had developed with the phones and put in the thing and then to get the data. Did you, where was the first place that you had your community work done, and what year was that? Was it like in America or in Africa?
For the CommCare technology, the first place was with Pathfinder International in Tanzania in end of 2007, beginning of 2008.
Oh, very good. And did you do any work in any rural areas in the United States, or did you have that opportunity?
We have a couple of projects in the U.S. I actually don't think any are rural. I think they're urban. We would be interested in working in rural areas of the United States.
So the first time someone used our software was in 2006. It was an organization called Health Systems Trust, which is a national NGO in South Africa, and the area was rural KwaZulu-Natal. So we haven't had much exposure to the US. We're actually kicking off our first project next week. I'm off to LA to train the field workers while I'm here. But so unfortunately, I can't comment on rural usage in the US.
Thank you. I'm in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, and thank you for the talks and the presenters.